Hello my friends and welcome. Yeah, it's getting worse for Russia because every day Ukraine gains more of the ground. It's been confirmed that Ukraine has liberated 300 square kilometers of its lands, which were previously occupied by Russians. Mostly Ukrainian counterattack is happening in Zaporizhia and Dnipropetrovsk oblasts. And on your screens you may see the most recent report from the Institute for the Study of War, where Ukraine propelled even further towards Berezova from Sosnivka, and from Vishneva Ukraine moved by 10 kilometers already. You may check out the scale, 10 kilometers, 20 kilometers, so roughly 10 is here, maybe just a little more. The map is presented by Institute for the Study of War. Now, I would say that the situation for the Russian army in Verbovo is already kind of hard. Ukraine attacks from both of the directions. There is the risk for the Russian army to be encircled, as it was in Kupiansk, by the way. Also west from Vishneva, the situation for Russians is similarly difficult. So why is it happening, my friends? Why Russia is losing the ground, but they were successful before in the same direction? Just 1 month ago, they were gaining lots of the territories, then slowed down, and now Ukraine counterattacks. Well, the answer is simple. Russians took the ground with just infiltration attacks. They haven't built any sort of the new defense lines. They were just pouring forces more and more, sometimes convoy attacks, but most of all infiltrations. So the playbook is similar to what it was in the Kharkiv Oblast back in 2022. Then Russia was attacking, getting more territories, occupying everything. But they didn't expect that Ukraine managed to gather the forces and counter-strike them. And later on, Russians just had one variant: to leave everything and to run as fast as possible. Well, I do not expect exactly the same situation for Russians in the southern part, in Zaporizhia, because of the Ukrainian counterattack. No, those vast counterattacks for now are not possible because of the drone kill zones. But something similar is happening, let's say at the lower scale, but still those are the biggest Ukrainian territorial gains for the last 2.5 years, just imagine it. And yes, Institute for the Study of War says that Russians still have some of the infiltration attempts. They try to hit back some of the small counterattacks, but those will be flatlined by Ukraine, I am sure about it. Ukraine has an advantage, especially at this hot spot of the front lines. Let's go to another map, it's a little bit more to the south, where Russia launched the counteroffensive towards Zaliznychne once again. But here we have the remark that Ukrainian forces yesterday were spotted at the same direction, so likely Russians advanced to the same location a few days before, so prior day they say, which means that Ukraine has the most recent presence in the settlement and Russia failed with their counteroffensive infiltration attack. Well, at the same time, Ukraine liberated already Ternavata. We had some of the drone confirmation videos, and Ukraine counterattacks towards Solodka from two of the sides. So from Andriivka towards Solodka, Russians, they're in very, very terrible state here. And in general, if Ukraine goes forward and cuts the main supply road for Russians in this sector, in this part of the front lines, for them, it will be really hard to keep those entire places towards north from Gulai-Pole. As for Gulai-Pole, of course, Russians have more supplies, so one from Stepanovka, Malinivka, Poltavka, so several of the roads. Partially those could be cut with Ukrainian counteroffensive action. Nevertheless, I think that Russians may hold Gulai-Pole for extensive period of time, simply because of the logistics and supply lines which they still have. But the Russian military bloggers are saying that the situation for them in Zaporizhia and Dnipropetrovsk direction is absolutely terrible. It is even worse than it was for them in Dobropilya a few months ago. Then Ukraine started the counteroffensive, cutting the Russian assault operation entirely in that place and causing Russians to have absolutely unimaginable losses as for this small portion of the ground. Moreover, to regain the territories, stupid Russian command sent more of the forces, convoys, but Ukraine already sent emergency brigades with lots of the drones, and all of those convoys were flat-lined. Russia lost roughly 200 of the vehicles per 1 month. Again, at the very, very small spot in Dobropilya, and that Dobropilya is not this Dobropilya, because, Ukraine has similar names, sometimes they are repeated, but that case happened not far away from Pokrovsk direction, where Russia broke through by 17 kilometers for 3 days, but it was the trap for them. And here is a very good remark from the Institute for the Study of War. The Kremlin continues cognitive warfare efforts to attempt to convince the West to abandon Ukraine by projecting the false narrative that Russia's battlefield victory in Ukraine is inevitable and that Russian forces are making widespread battlefield gains. It's just in their propaganda. They're saying that they're occupying territories, but de facto it's not like that. And analysts from West, from East, even Russian Z military bloggers, they're saying, what the hell is happening? We lost communication, we lost messenger, telegram, we cannot communicate properly, navigate whatsoever. We're losing the ground. And it's crucial, but Russian military, high command, it seems like it doesn't understand what the hell is happening, saying that, Telegram doesn't really matter or Starlink was used just occasionally. No, Russia used it on a massive scale as well as Ukraine. My friends, I need your attention here. While you're watching this video, press like just right now. Below there is thumb up, press it. And also subscribe for the channel if you haven't been subscribed. By the way, why? Why are you watching me without subscriptions? Come on. You should subscribe for this channel. It's illegal to watch me without subscription. So thank you so much for it. It costs nothing. It's for free. Just subscribe and like, okay? And that will propel this video and my entire channel in algorithms. Also, if you have this opportunity, you may support me on Patreon and on membership of the channel. Thank you so much for it because you're making my content possible with your support, and I do not make integrations, which sometimes are quite annoying. So thank you guys. Let's go continue with the video. Well, a unit observer, that's the OSINT whom I follow, really does a great job in analysis of what forces are out there in Zaporizhia and Dnipropetrovsk. Well, judging on what I see, if before there were mostly territorial defense groups, now Ukraine sent very capable forces. Like, for example, the 1st Assault Regiment, 33rd Assault Regiment, 275th Assault Regiment. Wow, so really capable guys there. And you see the relocation here from Pokrovsk direction, from Kupiansk direction, Ukraine sent those forces. And that means that Ukrainian army is really serious about this counteroffensive operation and really to push Russians hard. But again, the idea of this operation is not the breakthrough like it was, for example, the mission of 2023 counteroffensive, which failed to reach Black Sea, to reach Azov Sea maybe, to the occupied Zaporizhia nuclear power plant and many of the settlements, including Tokmak. Here, the idea is just to push Russians away and to cancel their attacking effort and to get the initiative on the front line, because before Ukraine was only losing ground here. And I was also telling about this direction, like, wow, what is happening? Ukraine should send reinforcements because this is the crucial thing. Russians may occupy Pokrovsk, but now there is no perspective for them to do it. You see, after Kupiansk's successful operation, Ukraine released some of the forces which could have been used here. And also, Russian occupied Pokrovsk. Ukraine withdrew the forces to the proper defense lines. And there are 4 of the defense lines which Russians have to cross if they really want to occupy the entire Donetsk region. But they are unable to do it just right now. So Ukraine released also some of the forces from Pokrovsk. And now they're attacking over here. And of course, Russian propaganda says that, Ukraine has weakened its army in some of the other spots and now Russia will take the ground there. Maybe, but something is not going okay for Russians, right? They're trying, going and dying in most of the cases. Yeah, they might take some of the ground, but it doesn't worsen the losses they have in their army. And those are damn critical. It cannot continue for a long time. And I guess that's the main thing why Putin tries to restrict the social media in Russia for Russians themselves, because they plan something this year, probably mobilization. So Russian regime doesn't need this truthful information to be spread in the media. Also, they're not okay with the Russian Z bloggers who say the situation as it is, that the Russian Defense Ministry tells an absolute lies about, for example, Kupiansk direction, or what is happening right now in Zaporizhia. Russian Z bloggers are screaming about it on Telegram, but they use VPN. And not every Russian is using VPN nowadays because it's one more obstacle to receive information. It's like not comfortable for many Russians, so they tend to switch to some of the Russian media, unfortunately. messengers like Max or social media of Kontakte, which is controlled by the Russian FSB. Again, I recommend to check out Unit Observer, an analyst on Twitter, and he publishes lots of the useful information, especially for me, since I reviewed those military maps for the general picture to understand who is who and who is where. And here we also have detailed information of how the situation developed in Zaporizhia direction, from the Russian occupation of Vuhledar and later on Russian attacks and the fight for Gulaipole, what forces Ukrainian used there, and the current situation on the front lines. Very, very useful. The Institute for the Study of War, well, it's okayish, but at the same time, it's kind of slow, and they also publish the information right away from the Russian publics without, I think, detailed confirmation. So sometimes I see huge Russian territorial gains, which are not true, so it's better to cross-check with other sources as well, like Deep State also, and Mike 073, and other analysts out there. By the way, ISW also mentioned that Ukraine went on counterattack in Polyvka. Well, actually, this is entirely the gray zone. I would say it goes over here towards the Vovcha River, and just to cross-check, let's check out Deep State. Yeah, Novopavlivka, you see, this is the gray area, and I understand that it's the gray area because I saw so many videos of the Russian convoys which were kaputted on the way to Novopavlivka and inside Novopavlivka itself. That's why we shouldn't put this one into red zone for sure. And this is the river of Vovcha, very close to it, you see. Russia just can't establish control over those fields. They need to go to some of the settlement, but every time they go to Novopavlivka, they're being flat-lined. There was no single successful attack towards Novopavlivka. None of those. I don't know who put this music, but it's fun. So one more Russian attack convoy was ambushed, mostly all-terrain vehicles and Nivas. Yeah, it's the massacre of the Russian infantry and equipment by National Guard fighters of Spartan Brigade. Ongoing Russian experiments with various improvised vehicle modifications are visible. Bukhanka pickup conversions and quad bikes fitted with grill-style cage screens. But come on, guys, where did it happen? I need to find out the location. Well, probably I'll have to wait for some more time. Oh my god, this is Niva. Well, Niva is kind of okay for the off-road capabilities, but it's not that powerful. 80 with something horsepower engine, it's not that great. And some of the dugout with motorcycles, yeah, here we saw it before. And lots of the vehicles being flat-lined, and what the hell? What is this? This is quad bike with a huge grill. What the? It's the first time I see this stuff. Oh, Russians are desperate. They're trying to find out the solution of how not to be hit by the drones, but every time it finishes with absolute madness for them. Oh, this one is interesting. A Russian storage facility in some of the hangar that was abandoned because of the war. So the first drone was just used to smash this window, and the second one was already waiting to go inside. And here you see Kamaz, or no, it's Ural track. Yeah, this is the northern front line. I'm sure about it because you can see this tactical sign of the Russian track with the sign they operate in Sumy region, Kharkiv region, or on Russian territory. Well, this vehicle is no more. Fuel tank, the most juicy place of the vehicle, of course. Boom. And there is nothing left. I hope Russians didn't park their horses there in the same room, because it happened already before and I already told you about it in my previous videos. I just want to return to the military map. So Deep State doesn't give us any sort of the information about the Ukrainian counteroffensive happening in Zaporizhia. Nothing, absolutely zero. Why? Well, because they keep calm. They're affiliated with the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, so they do not publish this information as it was with Kupiansk. But at the same time, they tell about some of the Russian advancements. However, those are just minor. For example, there is the change in Pokrov's direction, just a little, nothing substantial. Also, they say, well, it was a long-term update here in Siversk front line. Well, here Russia was actually successful in Siversk, yeah, a couple of months ago. But still, they hesitate to move massively towards Slaviansk, simply they're in lack of the resources. And by the way, about Kupiansk, yeah, this successful Ukrainian counteroffensive operation, I noticed that on my yesterday's stream, and yes, I have another YouTube channel where I stream, I call it the Trash Channel, it's about random stuff, but I stream there every day as well as on Twitch, so you may check out all of the links in the video description right below for my social media. Follow me there, guys. Well, what I want to say about this Kupiansk situation, that it's the first successful Ukrainian urban fight for such a big settlement. It's not a town, it's already a city, and definitely Ukrainian forces were successful in the actual battle against Russians. Well, Kupiansk before was liberated, it is in a green zone, but Russians, after Ukraine started this major counteroffensive in Kharkiv, they just run. They left Kupiansk. There was just some of the fight, but not substantial. They just grabbed everything that they could carry and run away. The urban fights were almost absent, but now, here Ukrainian army definitely passed this Rubicon of being successful in urban fights against Russians. Before, it was just Russian army that was, for example, or Wagner army, it's better to say, that took Bakhmut. That's the biggest city after Mariupol they managed to occupy. In Mariupol itself, Ukrainian army was encircled and was forced to surrender. In Kherson, you may say, yeah, it was successful Ukrainian counteroffensive, but Russians left the city voluntarily. Again, no urban fight was there. Russians left it because all of the supply lines were cut, and the Ukrainian army went there one day after. So Kherson is not destroyed like many of the cities which were occupied. Kherson was taken by Russians without any fights, and Kherson was liberated also without any fights. So Kupiansk is the major city for Ukrainian success in urban fights, and that is outstanding. That's the new chapter in Ukrainian military success. And also Russian generals, they helped Ukraine a lot with this success because they already say that Kupiansk has been taken by Russians, as they say, liberated, and they hesitated later on to send extra reinforcements to the city, and they found themselves encircled, basically like that, miraculously, but Russian generals believed into their own nonsense. That's why Wagner army in Bakhmut was more effective than Russian regular army, because Prigozhin knew what was happening on the front lines with tiny little details. Shoigu, Gerasimov, where is munition? But Shoigu, Gerasimov, they're in their cabinets, out there in Moscow, Kremlin, whatsoever, and they don't really care. They just fulfill demands of the Russian president or Russian circle in general. And how to fulfill those demands? Well, to lie openly, to put more red zones on the map, to show to Putin that we are winning, and Putin later on tells it to Donald Trump, and Donald Trump, oh, Russia is winning, Ukraine should surrender territories. It's happening like that, and Zelensky is out there in Kupiansk. He's actually forced to go there to show, Donny, I'm here, Russians are lying to you. Yeah, really? Putin, are you lying? No, Donny, I'm not lying to you. No, Russian army is the mighty one. But no, it's not any longer, at least. Wow, that's the firework. That's Grad BM-21 system. Some of the Russians are running around. This is the frequency-controlled drone, not the fiber optics, because the image is not a good quality. It's already understandable. But still, Ukrainian drone operators, they're capable. What is happening here? Again, Russian convoy? Well, maybe it's just a compilation of Ukrainian SBU. They recently started to publish lots of their previous videos and unpublished videos altogether as the operations in 2025 and 2026. So yeah, it's not something new, it was already happening before. But what we have new is this video filmed by Ukrainian drone operators. This is FP2 drone that is flying to hit Russian Tornado S rocket artillery system. Very capable, huge caliber, 200 with something, I don't remember actually. But this system is really capable and devastating, more precise than the Grad system, and may hit targets at the far distance. As we see, it's a very fresh video dated from today. This night or this morning it was hit, and our drones flown far behind the front lines, several of the kilometers, dozens of kilometers, and here you have Tornado S, which already launched several of the missiles, and it was hit and burning out their huge kabooms because some of the shells remained on the vehicle. Wow. Wow, what is this? What is happening here? This is Flamingo, guys. Yesterday it was shared, this video was shared by Ukrainian Firepoint company. Ukraine launched several of the missiles, which precisely hit several of the Russian facilities deep inside Russia, almost 1,000 miles away from the Ukrainian border. That's the huge success. It also tells that Flamingo is way more capable than it was before. Way more precise, and the Russian air defense system is unable to hit all of those missiles. They managed to bullseye Russian infrastructure, and let's look at those images. For example, Watkins Republic of Udmurtia, that's really far away. Охуеть! Wow! They're so happy when they see those kabooms, Russian, those Udmurts. This is the facility that was producing some of the rocket components, including the spare parts for Iskander and Oreshnik missile. So Russians are in lack of this facility. Yep. What is happening? And I heard maybe it's the window closing, but they call it's flies again. Yeah, that's for sure jet engine. It's not a standard moped sounding drone, so Flamingo hit this facility. It was confirmed by Ukrainian officials, it was confirmed by Russian Z channels that Ukraine is damn successful. And local Russian authorities, they say that some of the drone debris hit some of the infrastructure. Not significant, not serious, everything is okay, Russians. SMO goes according to plan. And here we have the targeted building. That's the huge facility, so Ukraine needs absolutely enormous amount of Flamingo missiles to hit everything of that flat line to the ground level. But I guess it's just a matter of time for Ukraine to really harm Russian production a lot. Yesterday, some of the Ukrainian sources report about significant Russian loss. Sukhoi 34 was shot down somewhere in Zaporizhia direction. However, for now, I don't have the confirmation about those news because Russian mill bloggers didn't say anything about it, and we don't have the real evidence like photo or video, at least something. So I'll wait to confirm this Russian loss for a while. But what Russia lost is this helicopter. This is not a military one, it's the commercial helicopter Mi-8, but also could be used for military purposes. Why not? Especially right now, I know that Russia is struggling with the engines for those helicopters because they were produced in Motor Siege factory, which is Ukraine, Zaporizhia. So potentially Russians may cannibalize those even commercial Mi-8 helicopters for the military purposes. That's why this kind of the loss is profitable for us. Well, the passengers are okay here, crew too, but the helicopter, it lost its tail. Yeah, that's the compilation from Signum unit. They attacked some of the Russian vehicles in Liman direction quite successfully, I would say. From what I see, Ukraine has way more of those videos published online. And I guess it demotivates Russians a lot. You know also why those videos are all around the internet from Ukrainian side mostly? Because of those electronic points which Ukrainian soldiers obtain. Each time they flatline vehicle, tank, BMP, Russian soldier, those points could be used to purchase more of the equipment from Ukrainian stockpiles, not spending actual money, but points. But every annihilation of the vehicle requires visual confirmation. That's why videos are all around the internet, and I sometimes also publish at least partially those over here. But I do not publish something gore, those images of the bodies and so on. So either I apply my censorship or I do not show the stuff. But why did Russians put the numbers, huge numbers, on those vehicles? For our drone operators to calculate how many vehicles did they kaboom? I don't know. It's the first time I see those huge placards. Like sometimes they put small number on the vehicle, but here it's an absolute gigantic number. number plate. Yeah, one, then the other one. Well, number 7, it seems like not the lucky number for Russians after all, judging on this video. Oh, that's the technology Russians are using. Some sort of the Molnia looking like drone carries FPV drone. So no Starlink any longer. And this mother drone is used as the transmitter and receiver of the signal. So retransmitter of the signal towards FPV, and by doing so they extend the range of FPV by several kilometers. Well, it's not an opening. Ukrainian army also uses this stuff as well as Russians. Maybe Russians are upscaling the production because they're in lack of the Starlink drones, so they have to come out with some of the solutions. Like, for example, FPV. But FPV carries less of the payload compared to this mother drone, but mother drone is also limited. So Russians, because they lost Starlink, they're unable to use drones like that for the longer range. Before, they used those massively. Also, Flamingos hit Neftegorsk gas processing plant in Russia's Samara region, approximately 1,200 kilometers away, which is 750 miles from Ukrainian border. The fire satellite images went crazy, showing all of that red. Gerasimov, look, you may put more red color on the map, but not in Ukraine, in Russia. Samara region far away. Color. Jeez, how many of the kabooms were there? That's crazy. Yeah, we have just this image, definitely the confirmation of the strike, but we have to wait for precise satellite image, detailed one after some time. But I imagine that it will be pretty much interesting to look at the aftermath. Oh, Lolik and Bolik, Fico and Orban, those failed European politicians, Russian authors. Well, this one failed for sure and will fail in April. Well, he feels his political end and he's in agony. Oh, I'm gonna block military support for Ukraine, those 90 billion euros. And definitely Hungary is now blocking that support, but not for a long time. No worries, guys. 1.5 months and everything will be restored. Unless he rigs the elections completely, but I imagine that Hungarian people will not be okay with that, so there will be massive protests, and Orban will lose power anyways. He is already shut down politician. Fico, he is similar kind of to Orban, and Fico promises to block energy supplies for Ukraine because we need our pipeline. We need to suck the oil from Russia from this pipeline. This is our sovereignty, how they call it. Well, Ukraine says if you want to suck the oil that hard, well, we can transport it for you from Odessa via Odessa-Brody pipeline that joins Druzhba pipeline that goes from Russia, so we can deliver it to Slovakia and to Hungary because Croatia was not okay in transferring Russian oil through their territory. But no, of course, Orban wants Russian oil. That's what he is paid for. By the way, Russia hit Druzhba pipeline on Ukrainian territory and Ukraine hit Druzhba pipeline on the Russian territory. Because via the same pipeline, Russia transfers its oil to Belarus, and there is the huge oil refinery in Belarus. It is so big that there was lots of the Belarus fuel in Ukraine in almost every of the gas station. And Russia sends the oil and obtains fuel for its army, of course. So the pipeline is the legitimate target for Ukraine. Magyar Birds did this job before, and they're very proud about it. And we are proud about Magyar. His team is incredible. And about the damaged Ukrainian pipeline, for that, Russia also should repair its pipeline. So I don't think it will happen. Honestly, I think we should wait till April for Jabahat to resign as Hungarian prime minister, and that's gonna be the end of the problem, not just for Ukraine, but for entire Europe. And Fico alone, without his friend Orban, he is not that dangerous, I would say. So this blackmail from Orban, it will not work. But again, I want to return to the aspect of the frozen Russian assets, yeah? If they had been confiscated before, we wouldn't face those kind of the challenges with a possible blockage of the military support for Ukraine by Hungary. So European colleagues, they didn't foresee that Orban at the very last moment may say, oh, I'm blocking everything. So that's the downside, that the Russian assets are still out there, frozen, but not in use by Europeans to support Ukrainian military. Basically, Europeans may fuel their own budget to support Ukraine, and everyone will win out of it. Everyone except Russia. and maybe a couple of the European bureaucrats. Yeah, Slovakia will suspend electricity supplies to Ukraine on February 23rd if Kyiv does not resume oil supplies to the country. Fico is an inhumane prick. Ukraine pays for this energy, and Ukraine experiences energy crisis. Ukraine is under constant Russian strikes, but this guy doesn't care. But we don't care about you. We need to suck Russian oil. I need it so much, Russian oil. Yeah, that's what it is all about. Russia is using its assets in Europe, Orban, Fico, to blackmail Ukraine, to pressure Ukraine and to cause internal instability in European Union. Announcement: as long as Ukraine blocks the Friendship oil pipeline, from Russia, Hungary will block 90 billion euro help for Ukrainian war loan. We cannot be blackmailed. Complaints about being blackmailed and blackmails Ukraine in the same message. That's all about this prick. A politician dead man already. Oh, China helps Russia a lot. What a surprise. Bloomberg says that China started to purchase more of the Russian oil for the last couple of months. They want to compensate the loss of one of the main clients for Russia, India. The good news is that China cannot replace India's purchasing capabilities fully, so Russia will lose anyways. It is losing already. And China, well, it tries to help Russia in this or other way to maintain economy. Well, it might help to float Russia for a while, but despite all of its willing, China cannot save the stagflating Russian economy. The black hole is already too big to fill it with something, You can throw what you have, but it's not enough and will not be in any way. So we're gonna witness this stagflating crisis, disaster of the Russian economy in the coming years. For sure. Buckle up and enjoy. Alright, Russians are definitely looking for more infantry. Before there was the information published about the drop of the payments for the Russian soldiers, but it was not correct. Actually, Russian regions are increasing the payments for Russians to join the Russian army. So in this quarter we see almost 5 million rubles for average Russian soldier to join Russian army. Straight away, sign the contract, obtain the money, flatline, your family may buy white Lada or red Lada, whatsoever. A perfect deal, Donald Trump would say, especially for Putin, but it also shows that definitely there is not enough men who would like to sign the contract bonuses for the lower price. That's why Russia has to rise it. It seems like Russians start to understand what is happening on the front lines. Lots of the videos on Telegram of how they're being flatlined and kaboomed. And I will not be kaboomed for 2 million. Maybe I'll think about 4. So how far they may rise? Of course, there's the ceiling, not 5 million, maybe 7 maximum. But after it, Russian budget cannot handle it. And those Russians who are not willing to lose their lives for 5 million, I think they will not be okay even with 7 million. For them, it's all evident that it's one-way ticket. But for other Russians, I think it's the gap already. So it's maximum. They're already reaching, to mobilize people just as they used to for those last 3 years, without announcing a full mobilization, just getting volunteers coming to the Russian army. And I think that this year will be a decisive one for Russian mobilization. I think that Putin is preparing something, that they are blocking everything right away, straightforward, restricting for Russian society not to speak about something terrible that is up to happen. The biggest air carrier in the world, Harold Ford, entered Mediterranean. I definitely expect some of the military action to happen in Iran, basically because the United States accumulated humongous group of the forces. It has never been like that since early 2000s. Then there was the war in Iraq and Afghanistan whatsoever, but now 2 air carriers, lots of the aircraft, air tankers, surveillance planes, everything is being deployed. I still don't believe that Trump may start some of the ground operation, but some airstrikes, massive ones, it might happen. When, well, this air carrier have to go there, stay for a while, and then they will start. Maybe 2-3 days, something like that. Sending of that amount of the forces is crazy expensive, and it is not done for nothing. So I think it will be something. Especially Israel wants it to happen. They're afraid of Iranian nuclear program, which is still out there. Donald Trump before said that it was annihilated completely. Wow, major success. But why are you doing it right now? Why are you demanding from Iran to cancel non-existing, as you say, nuclear program if it was definitely kaboomed. So it seems like the Midnight Hammer was not that effective as Donald Trump initially said. Alright guys, I'm gonna keep you updated, and please, if you have this opportunity, you may support me on Patreon and on membership of this YouTube channel. Yeah, obviously if you have this opportunity. If not, you may just press like to this video and subscribe for the channel. It is very important to propel the video in algorithms, so your actions help a lot. My friends, you're awesome, and I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.